Hello, everyone. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's edition of the WinUI Community Call. A little bit of info about the call. It takes place on the third Wednesday of every month at 1600 UTC, which is 9 a.m. Pacific time. Right now, we're in daylight time. Our next call is going to be on October 19th. If you'd like to reach out to us, check us out on Microsoft UI XAML GitHub for WinUI and Windows App SDK GitHub for Windows App SDK. As well, we have a Twitter handle at Windows UI for all the latest updates about WinUI and Windows App SDK. Let's see. So this is a slide to give a bit of an overview about WinUI and Windows App SDK. Check it out. This is a recorded live stream, so this whole stream will be available for you to check out after we're done. This month, we have a few feature spotlights and some updated news, and we'll also have plenty of time for your Q&A, both from GitHub that you've already asked and anything live that comes in the chat. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat comments, and we'll be sure to get to them. Alrighty, so first up, we have Dimitri joining us to chat about the media player element in WinUI 3. Hi, Dimitri. How are you today?
Hey, Gabby. Hey, good, thanks. So my name is Dimitri Korman. I'm a software engineer on the WinUI 3 team, and I'm going to talk about the media player element in WinUI 3. So the media player element is a control we've had back in Windows for quite a while. It dates back to RS1 1607 build, and basically August 2016 was when it first showed up. So before that, in OS, we had the media element control, which for video and audio. That one is matches the WPF Silverlight media control, and media player element was introduced to replace that and essentially be more of a thin wrapper around the media stack rather than the XAML framework actually implementing a media functionality. So with media player element, we're wrapping the media foundation media player object. So it's a thin wrap around that, and mostly the developers would interact with that object. Functionality-wise, they're similar. The media player element at this point is a superset of the media element functionality. The control provides native integration of the native audio video stack, the media foundation stack in Windows, and has a bunch of features, like a lot of source types are supported. Custom source type can be implemented, it comes with media transport controls. So a very highly customizable control that that exposes the various functionality and again can be customized to specific needs, including adding new buttons and features to it. And there are things like trick play, so backward, forward, playback rate, casting to devices, and closed captioning, compliant closed captioning, as well as full screen and other features as well. So as of today, the XAML media landscape looks kind of like this. This slide shows on the left side, we have the situation in system XAML, and on the right is what we're introducing to WinUI 3. So on the system side, we've got the now deprecated media element, and we've got the media player element, and below that we have the transport controls. So they both actually use the same media transport controls object. So it looks and works the same. And then this blue object here, media player, that's the MF media player. So that's what media player element is built on top of. And media player, in turn, is built on top of the MF media engine, sort of lower level, somewhat object. And whereas Media Element directly built on Media Engine. So it's all the same. It's all the same technology underneath. It's so with WinUI 3, we're essentially bringing Media Player Element as it is, and again, notice we're not bringing Media Element, so that's truly being deprecated now. So on the right side here, WinUI 3 components are green. Media Player Element, Media Player, the MF Media Player is blue. So it's the same OS Media Player. So the media stack is not being lifted. It's still the OS stack. So if you're in an older version of Windows down level, that version of the media player will be used. And in practice, that should not really be noticeable. We haven't seen issues around down level, missing functionality or anything like that. Yeah, again, the API and the API remains the same, and essentially it's the same experience working with the media player element in WinUI 3. So this is just a quick overview of how media is integrated into XAML, very high level here. But on the bottom, we've got, this is trying to represent a media swap chain that the MF Media Engine produces, manages, and pumps frames into. And on this visual tree here, we've got a media player element with some children. The first one is the presenter, so the swap chain will be drawn through that, and composition, interrupt, shared visual kind of object is used to present it here. And then we've got other children, potentially the transport controls on top of the media content. And then if there was closed captioning, not shown here, there would be another child for that. And yeah, that's kind of the overview of very high level integration. So on this slide is a little discussion of the difference between the system XAML and the WinUI 3 rendering aspect of how we actually render the media. So the high level point here is that in system XAML, we were using dwm.exe, so the system compositor, and there was a shared visual that basically was filled with the backed by the media swap chain. In WinUI 3, we have only the lifted compositor, and so which doesn't know about content outside of that app. So what we do for these situations is we use the lifted compositor to draw a transparent rectangle in the media location. We call it punching a hole. And then the system compositor is still drawing the media, is still actually presenting the media swap chain. And we strategically do that in a location right underneath the app window, right where the media player element is. And we get the kind of this experience of seeing through a punched hole into the system compositor's rendering of the media. And we do that for some other controls in WinUI 3, like WebView 2, for example. So media is the same in that way, the same type of integration for rendering. Okay. So cool. So yeah, demo here. I mean, this is basically media player element as you know. Those of you who have used it before in OS, it is the same thing. I should mention now that there is one omission from this release in the feature set, and that is the full screen functionality. So what was managed by the is full window property on the control, that is not available in this release. So we're just taking a little bit more time to get that one right. That will be coming though. Definitely an important feature that we will bring. We plan to bring. But aside from that, it all works roughly the same. Actually, exactly the same. So I'm just going to show a little bit of media stuff here in this app. So in this case, just loading local content. You know, this is the transport controls. They're the same as in system. You could do things like playback rate can be changed, for example. Say slow would be all this stuff, continues working, or we can go fast. Yeah, and other things like we can the stretch properties are kind of like important aspect of media playback, media rendering. So the 4 stretch properties that were defined in OS are still here. So we have none, fill, not very useful, but for completion it's there. And uniform to fill are kind of the two stretch modes that are very popular. And then we can still do like render transforms, for example, and get things like this. Here it is. Oh, again, this is okay. And then clip, applying clip should still work. Another kind of interesting use case, and actually kind of popular, is to have the media element in a pop-up. So that still works. And we can cast to a device. I don't have it set up here, but it is possible to do so. So basically, it's the media player element that that people remember from OS. It has arrived to lift it to WinUI 3.
Awesome. So there's a few things to think about, right, when using it in Preview 1.
Yeah, there are a couple of things worth noting. So again, same API and feature set, so that's the good news. For 1.2.0, full screen and actually a related presentation mode called compact overlay, which kind of gives you that picture-in-picture sort of effect. Those are not available yet, but they will be coming. We're working on those. And let's see, a couple of known issues here. So with respect to unpackaged apps, there's a limitation around local relative URI sources, so MSFX. Those do not work when specified as MSFX URI. So we have a partial fix that's coming in 1.2-preview 2, which will allow you to put one of those into the markup. So if you're setting source and markup to an MSFX, that'll work. But the workaround in general is to just provide the fully resolved URI. So that will be like file : whack, and then the full path. And again, we'll have a partial fix for that one, and we'll see what else needs to be done there if there's feedback on that scenario. And then closed captioning, there's some readability issues. So opacity isn't being properly applied in the case where transparent text is being specified. So in system settings captions, you could set text transparency to 25 or 75%. So those render poorly in this preview release, in this current release, but we have a fix for that in Preview 2. That should be completely resolved. So that's already there. And there may be some other issues, but overall, it is media player element in its sort of full modular full screen sort of state, and we're excited to deliver this much demanded feature.
Yeah, I think just like following up on that, we have 1.2 Preview 2 or Preview 1 out with this in it, and we really encourage you to try it out. That way, if there's additional bugs that we can fix in 1.2 Preview 2 or for the stable, and we can get to those. So definitely check it out in its preview state, and leave your feedback on the repos. But thanks, Dimitri, for the overview. I think it's really cool to check out how in like WinUI 3, it's the pop-out model and seeing that comparison between the two. So thanks for sharing some of that underground info.
Cool, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. All righty. So up next, I wanted to give a little bit of an overview of Template Studio. So Template Studio, it's something that we've been working on for a while. Mike Batista is really active on the repo and has been driving this project, but it really helps create like a modern Windows application just kind of out of the box. So you can download the extension for Visual Studio 2022, and you can create WinUI 3 apps, WPF, and UWP apps with the extension. And I'd also like to point out thank you to all of the dev community members who have contributed to the project. I know Dot Morton's project, WinUI X, has been a big part of making Template Studio where it is today. So if you want to check it out as I demo of it, feel free to go to the GitHub there. But I'm going to share my screen and do a little bit of a walkthrough. Cool. Alrighty. So I have already downloaded the extension here, and it creates a new project file that you can use. So typically to create a C# package app, you would use this WinUI 3 and desktop blank app packaged project. But here we'll use the Template Studio for WinUI project. Give it a generic app name, just app 7 for right now. And after I press create is when the wizard will appear. So here is the wizard. So I'm able to choose a project type. So like there's menu bar, just a blank one, but navigation pane allows me to have a nav view that extends into the title bar, apply mica. So that's what I'm going to stick with today. And the design pattern, just stick with MVVM. And then from that point, I can add lots of different pages into this app. Add them all, including data grid. So the data grid comes from the Windows Community Toolkit. So Template Studio brings in lots of different packages across Windows development to be a just streamlined one-stop stop to create your app. So add a few of those pages, and then here I can choose whether it's self-contained. So if I want the dependencies to ship with my application, or if I want it to be packaged with MSIX or not. So in this case, I will not package with MSIX as I am shipping self-contained. But I can also add in app notifications, theming support's already built in. And then the final one is testing. I just won't add that in for right now. And then at that point, I can create. So it's creating the project here. I'll give it a couple of seconds, but I do have a cake already baked. And as part of Template Studio, there is a lot of pages, like I mentioned, that are automatically generated. That also include several to-dos for you to use and improve when you're building your app. So let's check it out. Let's start running this one. I'm going to check the comments. I know when I was trying, there might have been some issues with audio. If there are, just let us know in the comments. But I'm going to go ahead and run this app that I already prepared just to make sure. But you can see here, even in the views, going from main window XAML to main page XAML to shell page. Shell page is showing there's shell page. It's showing that custom title bar with your app name and then the navigation view control. But you can see here's some of the to-dos that are part of it, updating the item titles, updating the item icons, and so forth. But there's two projects here, and we can open up the CS project and see that it's using .NET 6. I think it's about to load up. It's using .NET 6. It was self-contained, using WinUI X, Community Toolkit, WinApp SDK 1.1.3 for right now, and so forth. So it's all built in, simple wizard. We're about to see what we've got. I will give it a minute. I see a question up top. What about C++ support template studio? I think that's something that's in the works. I know that Mike has a roadmap up for what's coming next, and that it's not just limited to WinUI 3. So I definitely encourage you to check that out. Let's see. I know it's coming up. What else? We have some styles that are built in, view models. I think I'm going to let this compile for just a little bit longer. And then we can take a look. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen, go back to slides, and then once it's ready, I'll pull myself in. So let's see. Demo. So I want to talk a little bit about the upcoming news in WinUI and Windows App SDK. We mentioned 1.2 Preview 1. I'm going to be having Darren come on and talk a little about an upcoming Windows development stream. Wanted to mention that there was also a recent servicing release, 1.15, where we fixed a couple of issues that you had reported. So thank you for filing those. And the issue numbers are posted there. We'll also share the same feature list for 1.2 that we shared last week, and then the upcoming WinApp SDK and WinUI releases. And as I was chatting, the app is ready. So I'm going to share that again. Alrighty. So here's the application just out of the box. It has Micah already applied, the app title, an app icon, background, and it also has some of the pages that are all as part of the navigation view. So I think Template Studio is a great way to kickstart creating a new application, a new WinUI 3 application. Great. And from there, we'll continue with the news. So WinApp SDK 1.0 or 1.2 Preview 1 came out a bit earlier in September. So on September 5th, we released that contained media player element. As we mentioned, WinUI 3 control styles and behavior are up to date with WinUI 2.8. We've also added in the app notification builder, which helps create notifications. You can use this to create it in markup instead of XML. We also have more bug fixes from 1.1, which includes those servicing releases that we've been doing for 1.1 and more. So check out the release notes at the link below for more info. And as a note, as for all preview releases, there could be breaking API changes between a preview release and a stable release. We're not anticipating that at the moment, but that's always possible. And then I'm going to have Darren on to give a little bit of info. Hello, Darren.
Hello. I heard my name. I was like, oh no, I need to stop working. Where's the window? Where's the window? Oh gosh, I have like 3 screens up. Jeez. Hello everybody. Y'all might remember me from last month. If you remember me, hi. I'm glad you're here. Anyway, so we're humans. We promise. And also in an effort to connect with everyone, the WinUI 3, the WinApp SDK community, and as well to show off really cool Windows features, like cool development features for developers on Windows, not just Windows developers, but developers on Windows. I will be doing about a 2-hour live stream of just me coding something. And what that something is, well, y'all actually get to decide what that is. Either today or tomorrow on the Windows UI handle, we'll be sending out a question of, hey, what do you all want to see on this stream? What do you want to see Darren develop? What do you want to see Darren make mistakes at? This is not going to be a curated stream. It's literally going to be me opening Visual Studio with all the tools mostly installed, and we're just going to start coding. and see where we get in about 2 hours. So that is going to be on Twitch at twitch.tv/thatprogrammingguy. 2Gs. It's kind of weird. I actually didn't know people were confused about that until I spoke to some people. I'm like, is that 2Gs? I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't there be 2Gs? I don't understand. So yeah, the first stream is actually going to be a week from today, 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time for about 2 hours. Another quick thing is it will be on my personal account, but it's still like hybrid Microsoft-y. Anyway, y'all should join. I'm going to look forward to it. I hope you're all going to look forward to it. And it's going to be this Wednesday. And keep a lookout for that tweet to give us suggestions of exactly what do you want to see be coded live stream. As I said, this includes bugs, not bugs, WinUI 3, Windows App SDK, make a Python app, make a Rust app. I don't know. Just whatever y'all want, just put it in the tweet, the reply to the tweet. And yeah, we'll get working on it.
Yeah. And I'll be there helping moderate, saying hello. So excited to see you all.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Darren.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. So thanks, Darren, for hopping on. I want to also go over some of the features we were targeting for WinApp SDK 1.2. This is the same slide from last month if you were able to join us then. But this includes media playback controls, like I mentioned earlier, dynamic refresh rate, which is a new feature for Windows 11. Again, updates to the WinUI 3 controls to be in parity with WinUI 2.8. Widgets, which we're excited to announce and talk about. Looking forward to having them on the call for next month. Support for the upcoming .NET 7 release, as well as support for building ARM64 apps with an upcoming Visual Studio ARM64 release. There's more that I haven't included in this top level list. Definitely check out our release notes for both the previews and the stable once they come out. But some other updates include app window title bar APIs going down level, size reduction, improvements to Template Studio, RTL support in the WinUI 3 title bar, and an app size reduction for C# apps published with IL trimming. So if you have any questions on that, you can ask in the chat and we'll do our best to answer. Let's see. And so speaking of those upcoming releases, as we've hinted at earlier with talking about bug fixes for media controls, we are planning to release Windows App SDK 1.2 Preview 2 in just a few weeks. So look forward to that. So this will have both new features and those bug fixes preparing going towards that 1.2 stable release. We really encourage you to check out this release as kind of the precursor to the stable Windows App SDK 1.2 release. So your feedback there will help us catch any bugs that your apps are running into, so we can address that before the stable release. So that stable release will be in early November, I believe. That's what we're aiming for right now, early November. I think last month we may have said, or we said a earlier date, but as Preview 1 kind of went out the door a little bit later than we thought, we've pushed our whole schedule back. So just keeping you in the loop about where we're currently at with that. And then after 1.2 stable, we'll get back into the swing of things with more experimentals, previews, and then 1.3, which we're aiming for Q2 of 2023. So like mid-year 2023. And with that, we can go into Q&A. So let me bring everybody back on the screen. Let's see, remove, adding everybody in. Hello. Let me see. Oh, the mouse. Great. How is everybody? Or especially Savoy. How is Savoy as well? Keeping us off.
Oh boy,
Sorry,
do I feel
everyone.
special. Is my mic coming through, Gabby?
Yep, sounds good.
Awesome. Let's see what kind of questions we have here in the chat so far. Ryan, Let's start here with this question from John, who's asking for updates on the reappearance of a XAML Visual Designer or of Hot Reload for WinApp SDK C# code projects.
Yeah, hi, John. We will probably have more to share on some potential improvements in that area in a bit. It's sort of being planned out right now. I think it's worthwhile doing a slight tangent just to talk about how we're thinking about improving stuff like that moving forward. Over the last year or so, I've hinted on a couple calls that we've been pretty busy with some specific partnerships that we've been trying to do with different groups in the industry. We'll be able to talk a little bit more about those partnerships over the next month or two. So we're almost ready to talk about those, but not quite yet. But they've chewed, I would say, a lot of our team's attention. Over the next 6 months or so, we're hoping to shift that back a little bit and be able to handle some of these quality of life things, like improving our live visual tree, like Hot Reload. We're still sort of in the process of trying to plan out sort of how much resourcing will we put on those types of improvements, and also what specific ones do we want to tackle. But I would say I would guess that there's going to be a little bit more attention in those areas over the next half year to a year. So that's just a little bit of insight into like how it is that we plan and how we sometimes have to shift things around. So we'd like to tackle some stuff like that. So I'm glad you asked that question. Thanks for raising it, John.
If I could just tack on to what Ryan just mentioned, John, I pasted a link into the chat. Unfortunately, the current state of Hot Reload is a bit of a mess, but Tommy Klein has put together a compatibility chart. So my question would be whether your configuration, your combination of the version of Windows App SDK and the version of Visual Studio that you're using falls into one of those happy cells in that graph. Again, as Ryan said, we're hoping to improve that story moving forward, but there are configurations that do support Hot Reload. You just have to consult that graph and see if it falls into that.
Awesome. All right. Well, another question for Mike or Ryan. Terry's asking, is 1.2 Preview 1 suitable for store deployment?
The simple answer to that is no. You can't publish an app to the store that's using a preview. I think it's actively blocked, but it certainly is not a supported scenario, and that's publicly documented. I dropped a link into the chat as well for that. So yeah, that's unfortunate. That doesn't mean you can't use it. You can't develop against it. You can't sideload it for your testing team. All of that is still possible, but you can't publish it in the store.
The one thing I would add with that is we are going through and using the Preview 2 as essentially a release candidate, getting that out so that everyone can test with it, make sure that everything's good on it, and then not expecting any additional functionality or essentially lock the contents of Preview 2 and getting 1.2 stable out the door soon after. So once we have Preview 2 out, then we're looking at a matter of a few weeks before 1.2 stable comes out. But we are on the end game of that. We've heard the comments about the drag and drop issues and other items that have come up, and we know getting 1.2 stable out the door sooner rather than later is a priority.
Awesome. Yes, and while we're on that, the question about servicing the drag and drop fixes is a legitimate question, but it's a calendar issue. It would take us at least as long to turn the crank to get the drag and drop fixes put into the 1.1 series. If we were to release it as a servicing update, it would take at least as long to do that as it is to continue with the 1.2 train and release that. So, which is unfortunate. We wish we could turn the crank faster, but there's really no advantage to servicing the drag and drop fixes, given that they'll be out at least as fast with the 1.2 release, the stable release.
Awesome. Question for the room, not sure who to ask this to. Terry is asking, are there any resources to explain the WinUI compositor? Does anyone happen to know?
I want to understand the question a little bit, since it says, "Are there any resources?" Is there anyone on this call to explain the compositor? Would you like to see the compositor explained as like a topic for a future call, or is there like a more specific question?
That's a great question. It came from Terry. I see Terry commenting, so we'll let him answer in chat.
Terry, why don't you put some comments in the chat and help us understand your question a bit better?
And Alvin Ashcraft also mentioned in the chat something about improving the documentation on that. So there's a response.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Not sure if this is something we have someone to talk about right now, but we have Paulo asking about C++ support on Template Studio. Is that something we can speak to?
Yeah, that was something I kind of answered a little bit going through. Check out the roadmap on the Studio GitHub. And I believe that was on there, but I would need to double check. That would be the source of truth.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabby. Let's see. While we're talking about that, Terry's asking, can we expect WinUI templates other than Template Studio for test projects, packaged or unpackaged? Mike, maybe that's a question for you.
I don't know any more about that either. I know we've been doing some work on the unit test support, but I'm not sure what that's either. I don't know if you know any more, Scott. Nope.
Yeah. Well, I have taken a note actually on that comment. So I think we just need to feed that into our planning and thinking.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. And again, this always goes for questions on this call. Some of these topics are very technical. If it's not something we got answered to you back on here, feel free to write to us on the GitHub. We have a discussion issue template that can be filed for conversations like this. That'd be perfect for. This maybe pushes deeper down that same hole, but Matt Lacey is asking any updates on automated UI testing capabilities for Windows apps. Is that the same wheelhouse?
Yeah, it's in the same wheelhouse. Like I know some issues, and we've done some work on it. Trying to remember who it was that had a blog post run through unit testing with WinUI 3 app, and we can find that.
Awesome. Okay. Let me jump here for a moment. Ryan, question for you. Ghost was asking about the product board being updated for 1.2. Is that something? Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I think actually we have covered this. I think a couple previous community calls, but I'll sort of reiterate this here as well because not everyone is able to make every call. We're going to be ramping down our use of product board. Product board's a great tool. There's certainly no issue per se with it, but we want to be able to coalesce where we define our roadmaps and where we define what features are coming and how we're planning. We want to coalesce that into a couple places. Obviously, we talk a lot on the calls, and Gabby does a great job of like giving us lists and things like that. But we would also like to coalesce things more on our repository and more in our documentation area. Product board has always sort of felt like this other place you have to go, and there's already a lot of places to go and get info. So we are going to be transitioning to a more concise place to go and mention that type of info. So it's important. The important thing to take away from that is the type of information that product board gave. That's not going away. It's just the mechanism. We'll likely be ramping down product board. We will be ramping down product board and then trying to focus a little bit more on using the repository to go to signal things. And we're going to be building a plan for that over the next month or two.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we have. Is WebView 2 something we have anyone on the call who's able to speak to?
I can speak to that, yes. I think there's a couple questions on there that I'm anticipating. Go ahead and ask them.
Sure. If you have any top of mind, we can go for that. But Diego is asking, WebView 2 is not able to show the background behind when everything is set to transparent, any update on that, it would be great to see Micah behind a web page.
Okay, I actually wasn't anticipating that one, so I can follow up on that. What I'll do is I'll take a note to follow up on that because I'm not familiar with that issue. So sorry, Diego.
No worries. Lots of deep questions today. That'd be great for our GitHub.
It's great. It's awesome that you guys are asking like really detailed questions. Thank you.
I actually didn't see any other WebView 2 questions at the moment. So if you do see one, Ryan, feel free.
There was a couple I think that came in on GitHub, so I'll ask them from PubTom. One of them was, when will you fix the unable to interact with WebView in WinUI issue? I had a chance to read over that issue this morning. It's 5299. I don't have an answer as to when it'll be fixed, but what I have is I've kicked off a conversation across all of the folks on our team that work in WebView to figure out what's going on, because it sounds like there's an issue introduced in 2.6 and it's carried through to 2.8. So since there's multiple people reporting it, I'm just going to try and get an update on when it is that we think a fix for that might be coming, or if a fix for that is coming. So I don't have an ETA for you right now, but you've sufficiently poked it. So good work on that. And then the other question that was also asked by PubTom was, when will the WinUI 2.8 version of WinUI WebView 2 run on UWP apps on Xbox? Great question. And the answer is probably never, because we would have to do significant feature work, actually at multiple layers of the stack, to bring WebView 2's core engine to Xbox, where it currently does not operate, and then also would have to go and make adjustments to WinUI 2 that would probably require a WinUI 2.9. And we're not currently planning to do a 2.9 since we're moving WinUI 2 all up into a sustaining mode and focusing our efforts moving forward on WinUI 3. So it is unlikely that we get to the point where we actually make that capability possible.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I just caught his GitHub questions there, right as he said it.
All good.
Which I realize we actually have some awesome ones from Scott, for Scott here. So Scott, can you comment on why the Windows App SDK and WinUI 3 are not mentioned in the posts about new releases on the .NET blog, while at the same time Maui is getting a lot of publicity and is in the spotlight for .NET 7?
Sure. I don't have much to add to the discussion on this topic beyond what Kevin Gallahan and Darren Rowe have mentioned. I think they did a good job, which is that the attention on Maui is not to the exclusion of WinUI 3. The Maui bindings for Windows use WinUI 3 controls. So the information is not highlighted because if we've done it right, it's simply an implementation detail. In the same way that the WinApp SDK depends on C++ WinRT and C# WinRT and other third-party dependencies, but we don't highlight that in the release notes. I suppose, to Nikolai's point, I suppose that opacity can backfire in the sense that it could be interpreted as a lack of commitment. But as Kevin and Darren both point out, the Windows App SDK we are firmly committed to it. It's richly documented. We're advocating it across numerous channels. So that is not the case, Nikolai. We're committed to it. You just may not see that in the .NET channels.
Awesome. Thanks a ton, Scott. Another question for you. Can you report the status? Oh, I see this is a drag and drop fixes again one. I think we've covered that sufficiently.
We have,
if there's more to say there.
Just one more point on that is that the drag and drop fixes are available in preview 1. So in terms of test validation, you'd see them there. You just wouldn't be able to put them in your app in the store until stable 1.2 stable is released.
As a follow-up with that, please do go through and look at preview 1 and when it comes out preview 2, and please verify that it does fix your drag and drop issues. If there are anything that is not covered by that, let us know. Get on GitHub, let us know and file the issues there, because it should take care of all of those issues. And if it doesn't, please let us know as soon as possible.
Right.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. A question for Howard and Mike. Is there any news about a new API for application data for packaged and unpackaged apps?
Do we have Howard?
Mike, you want this or me?
Go ahead.
There's no change in status. There's a issue posted proposal. It's in the backlog. It's not currently in the 1.2 plan, but it is under consideration for future. If it's something you're interested in, certainly please add a comment to the GitHub link. I'll throw it to the chat.
Awesome. Okay. Ryan, a question for you. Are there plans to introduce a layer on top of Win32 for basic features like message handling and VDI operations? Think of WinForms graphics and all related classes. We should not have to call setWindows subclass for handling basic messages like WM_command, nor need to work with device contexts.
Yeah, to answer your question very directly, we don't have a plan for that right now, and it wasn't really particularly on our radar. I think it's an interesting idea. This is a good example of where I would recommend filing an issue, and then maybe folks in the community can also talk about their scenarios that they want to achieve. But it hasn't really been on our radar, so we'll make sure to have an issue filed for it so that we can start considering it when we do our planning.
Awesome. And back to the WebView 2 thing, Ryan. Someone was asking if there's any updates on a WinUI 2 WebView printing release window.
Okay. Is that separate from I saw that there was a question about general printing too, or maybe I misread that. But oh no, it was a WebView printing. Yeah, I don't have an update on that. Sorry.
No problem.
A good follow up that maybe I can get to next month.
For sure. Let's see. So we're getting close to being through all the questions that came through GitHub. Just a few left in the chat we haven't covered. Scott, wasn't sure if this was more feedback or a question, but someone was saying it'd be very helpful if the compiler could report and identify on specific string resources missing from the resource file, rather than just raising a general non-specific error. Not sure if that was anything you wanted to comment on.
Sure. Yeah, I feel that pain too. Evelyn Wu has made some improvements in that area to make resource lookup a little more diagnostic in the debug experience. We also have talked about, we've acknowledged in previous community calls, the regression in app unhandled exception for surfacing some of these issues. Instead, what happens in the F5 experience is that an exception, a stowed exception, pops all the way up to application start, and it's impenetrable and it's useless. It's not actionable. So the unhandled exception issues are fixed in 1.2. Those should be you should be able to evaluate that in preview 2 coming out shortly, and that should help to some degree. And then, as I said, Evelyn has made some improvements in that space too. Not sure when those fixes will land. I can follow up on that. I don't think those are scheduled for 1.2, but the point is we're making a priority of improving the debug experience, the diagnosability of these issues.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Dimitri, are you perhaps able to help us with this question from Athel on how do I pass HTTP headers when playing videos from the internet using Media Player Element?
Sorry. What is? I think I might need more elaboration on that one. So is it an HTTP based source that we're talking, media source that we're talking about?
I posted the
Yeah,
question
I think
back
that's
to our
right.
chat.
Yeah, I think that's right as the HTTP source.
Yeah, those just work. You can specify a HTTP URI as the source, create a new URI, and WinRT URI, and it could be an HTTP server based content.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, and Athol, if you have more specifics on that, feel free to write us back in chat. Ryan, let me know if this is something you can speak to, but I saw we also had a question from Athif on any news on native splash screen support for WinUI 3 apps, like UWP. Currently, different WinUI 3 apps go with custom solutions for splash screens that make WinUI 3 apps not as consistent in this way.
Yeah, we're probably about 70-80% of the way through our 1.3 planning, which is aiming for end of March. This is on our radar. It's definitely like an item that looms on our backlog, but currently it's not sitting in the 1.3 plan. So, probably something we would consider for 1.4 later next year.
Sweet. Okay. Question for you, Scott. Terry's asking, can you talk about how the WinApp SDK / WinUI 3 and the MS Test and MSIX teams work together?
Yeah, this came up a little bit earlier. I wasn't prepared to answer it. Yes, and I think Terry and Matt both have raised the question about MS Test ability with Windows App SDK. Yes, there are some issues there that are being worked. We did make some improvements, and then we saw a little bit of regression there. So that's being tracked. I'm going to copy that into the chat right now, so folks can follow up on that. But we're working on that and hope to have that resolved shortly. Fortunately, that's out of band with respect to Windows App SDK releases, so we should be able to make a fix for MS Test, ship it in a NuGet package update, and get some of these scenarios unblocked.
Awesome.
Hey, Savoy, I just wanted to comment about that media, HTTP media source question. I was just poking around.
Oh, sure. Yeah, go
Scott
ahead.
was talking. I guess I just wanted to make clear that the media player element that we have in WinUI 3 is a wrapper around the media player, which is Windows API. So that's probably the place you want to look. Just poking around a little bit, you can create a media player. Sorry, media player uses a media source. You can create a media source from a bunch of things, including URI, which I don't think will let you pass the headers, but you can create it from stream. So maybe you could be downloading the stream yourself and then be passing that stream into the media player. Sorry, that was just live poking around.
No problem. Thanks for sharing that, Mike. Gabby, a question for you. Oh, and of course, I just lost it. Here it is. Hirsch had asked, by the way, is there any sort of Discord or Teams community around the WinUI / WinApp SDK?
Yeah, so there is a Discord community that's been around for quite some time. It's not led by us at Microsoft. It is out there in the world community-wise. So it is called UWP Community. You can search for it. I believe it's also on our GitHub, but definitely check that out. There are channels in there for both active, kind of asking coding questions, getting involved with other developers. And it's called UWP Community, but it has kind of channels for developing using WinUI, so both 2 and 3, and using WCT on Uno and several others. So I would encourage you to check out UWP Community on Discord for that.
Sweet. Do we still have Bob here? I saw we had a title bar question just come through. I don't see him. Didn't know if he moved to the...
He's back.
And I appear.
Back. Like magic. Sun Long was asking, will set title bar API support Z index like UWP's set title bar? Is that something you happen to know?
It's a great question, and similar to Ryan's point on the 1.3 planning, we're going through, we've heard a lot of feedback on the difficulty and the complexity with title bars, with the custom title bars, the interaction with app window and the WinUI window, and with just windowing and title bar in general. We've heard a lot of feedback on. We are looking at those and what can be done in the 1.3 release and kind of planning out how much of that we want to bite off and what's the right level of it. We don't have a baked plan on that yet, but that is an item that we are looking at as a part of the 1.3 planning.
Awesome. Okay, question for you, Mike. Any plans to make backdrops work better down level, even just adding a simple fallback background color or something? They're quite tricky to work with when you also need support with Windows 10.
Yeah, they are tricky to work with. We've got some sample code in the WinUI gallery on GitHub. There's better support in 1.2. I can't remember if you had this on your list, Gabby, but there's better support in 1.2. The desktop acrylic backdrop will be supported on Win 10. So is like if you had written that 100 lines of code where you do a supported check, that'll just always return true now. So that's desktop acrylic backdrop working Windows 10, but Micah still Windows 11. So you still need to do the supported check. And yeah, very interested in having some automatic fallback support. And WinUI 2 desktop acrylic, we had automatic fallback support, and we're definitely interested in adding something like that again for Micah.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Let's see. So a question for Mike and Scott. Why is WinUI 3 in WinApp SDK NuGet? And they're writing that because Yoshi says, I'm a little annoyed that the WinApp SDK NuGet also includes WinUI 3. It was easier when they were two separate packages.
Yeah, I can take a stab at that, and Mike, you can fill in as well. I think we're still evolving that story, the deployment. We started off, as you might remember, with a number of so-called thin packages and a meta package. And we realized that just created a bunch of confusion for managing individual version numbers. Given that all of the runtime assets are contained in a single framework package, there are too many packages involved here. I apologize for that. So we realized that it's simplified thing to have a one-to-one relationship between the NuGet package, the developer asset, and the framework package, the runtime asset. Now we understand that there are pros and cons to that, and now it makes it more difficult to a la carte use different aspects of Windows App SDK. So we're certainly open to changing that, but that's a fundamental kind of a re-architecture. So we'd have to consider all the numerous ways that would be a breaking change and find a way to manage that. But there are certainly people who are advocating for changing that, but we'd have to think it through.
I mean, the design that we have now is very much a simplification for us.
Mm-hmm.
There's always one package. There's one framework package. There's one NuGet package, and it's fewer combinations to have to worry about how to support and how to test. But it's definitely it's fun when you ask the question, because it's a topic that we talk about a lot too. I think one of the most confusing things today is that if you're using WinApp SDK and not using WinUI, we have perhaps some targets that are trying to guess if you're using WinUI or not. And that gets especially confusing if you're using WinApp SDK in a WPF app, because the WPF app looks very much like a WinUI app to the targets.
Yeah. So, as a person who's made apps using Windows App SDK, I have ran into that, and the errors you get are so cryptic. Every time I get that, I have to go back to my issue on GitHub and be like, right, what was this fix? I totally forgot what it was.
Yeah, so that's one of the places where it most visibly shows up. So yeah, we talk about it a lot too.
Awesome. All right. Well, we had just a couple left that we didn't get to, but as always, we'll save those for next month's call. And I know there were also a couple questions this time that we weren't fully prepared to have a discussion on, which is just the nature of some of the more technical topics. So again, if there's any further discussion needed, please write to our GitHub repo. We have a discussion issue template that can be used for things like this, as well as a lot of the questions that get posted on the monthly thread for community call questions actually end up having a lot of great discussion there as well. So feel encouraged to stay in touch with the team. We hope to get everyone's questions answered. Thanks to the team members who joined us to answer all these questions and for everyone who asked them. With that, I'll turn it back over to Gabby to close out our call.
Awesome. Thanks, Boy. Thanks for Thanks for moderating. And thanks everyone who joined, asked questions, engaged with us. We really appreciate you coming on month after month and testing out WinUI and Windows App SDK. So for that, we'll be closed out as we hit 10 a.m. Pacific time. Thanks for joining. Let's see. Too many people. We say goodbye one by one. Sweet.